How's it going, guys? Chris back here again with another episode of Historic Brawl. Today, we're doing a lore dump. I wanted to bring you another terrible tribal deck, but I was building orcs, and I realized that just there weren't enough good orcs, and it would just be another halfling debacle. So I decided to build a Forces of Evil, a Morgoth, not really Morgoth, a Sauron themed or the enemy themed Lord of the Rings deck. I'm very poorly explaining this. Valki is our commander. There will be Lord of the Rings spoilers. If you haven't seen Lord of the Rings, you probably should. But yes, some of the cards are themed, and Valki, he fits our theme of being one of our Saurons. So there was a time in the Lord of the Rings lore where Sauron's chilling, laying low. That's his god of lies form, right? Like, he's trying to convince the Easterlings that that him and Morgoth are the true divines, right? And for a while, I think he really was working under Morgoth, so he was trying to convince people that Morgoth was the guy. But I think during the Lord of the Rings timeline, he's actually convincing people to worship him instead. Because I don't think he's actually that, what do you call it, that loyal. Now, during his time under, or no, this is slightly after his time under Morgoth, he made his Ring of Power right, and he became the Lord of the Rings. But these really powerful humans called the Númenóreans, oh no, we got our spell card. I will mill you in retaliation. Yeah, these really powerful humans called Númenóreans, who got their own special island for being the Valar's best boys. They came to Middle-earth, pretty much defeated him, and captured him and took him prisoner back to Númenor. And during that time, he's kind of serving like a Yawgmoth Thran physician role. Despite being a prisoner, he eventually becomes like the advisor to this Númenorian king. So in the same way that Yawgmoth was like an advisor to the queen of the, I don't know what empire that was. We're gonna make you do a captive audience. No attack. So our opponent could target themselves with River's Rebuke to get out from underneath captive audience, but captive audiencing me does nothing. Or River's Rebuking me does nothing. Yeah, so during this time, he's kind of like this suave advisor who is the enemy in your own court, right? Like, that's why Yawgmoth is in the deck. I'm kind of glad I pivoted halfway through building the deck, because now I just get to talk about all the random Lord of the Rings lore I've absorbed over the years. And this was all before Lord of the Rings, right? Like, this is before the first War of the Ring. So we're going to go on to Game 2. We achieved a victory in Game 1 for the forces of the Dark Lord. That out of context would sound awful, but in context with Lord of the Rings, it's okay. It's probably okay. I don't know, man. Keep Ashnod's Intervention, another flavor addition to the deck. Sauron has died a couple of times. So on Numenor, he basically convinced the humans of Numenor to go and attack the Valar, invade the land of the gods, right? And that was a terrible plan because the gods stopped them almost effortlessly and then retaliated against all of Numenor. And the result was that Sauron, who was still in Numenor at the time, lost his physical body because it sunk with the rest of Numenor. Hey, we have protection up. That's actually kind of neat. So he died in that context, right? And then Isildur, beginning of Lord of the Rings, cuts off his ring finger, causing him to dematerialize again. Because at that point, he's not really a physical entity anymore. He does have a physical body at that point, but most of his power is left in the ring. So we have a little bit of lore there. Orc. Like I said, this started out as an orc tribal deck. Oracle's Bloodfast. No lore behind it. I don't have an answer for everything, unfortunately. I wish I did, though. I say it'd be a fun idea to try to just make up the most strictly on-theme deck possible. Another good thing about the back side or the front side of Valki is that when the rings were actually being forged, Sauron went to the smith Celeborn. Like, if you played the Shadow Under Mordor games, you probably already know that side of the story, right? But he went to them disguised as Anatar, the Lord of Gifts, and Valki, he's a black creature that can disguise himself as other things, right? Like, that's a flavor win. Pass. I will block. I'll probably end up taking the same thing, but I did save some damage. Decline. That effect is not as good as I remember it being. We'll probably have to get rid of the poison tip. So there's actually something favorable about this matchup too that I just realized as I was sitting here contemplating the death of my commander. Orcs in Lord of the Rings are actually just corrupted elves. They were taken in, I think it was by the guy before Sauron, Morgoth, and they were turned into orcs. It's kind of similar to the not Lord of the Rings, the Elder Scrolls interpretation of orcs as Osmer. Although Lord of the Rings obviously came first, right? So our plan is to block Corpse Explosion, murder some elves. We're not going to murder the important elves, like the biggest three will survive. And we will just die to this attack, so it's not really worth worrying about too much. Because I cannot block that much damage. GG opponent, I have no answer. Gruesome Scourger will live to fight another day. Orcs are not particularly known for their bravery. Dude, I thought there were a lot of orcs on Arena, but there were not a lot of orcs on Arena. They were pretty spread out between the Grixis colors. And there wasn't like a really good Grixis commander for them. Like, we could have gone with like a Nicol Bolas, but Nicol Bolas is just, he's not really that akin to Sauron as from like a lore and a story perspective. Like, he's an evil guy that wants to take over, well, Bolas is arguably aiming higher. Right? He wants to take over the multiverse, whereas Sauron, he wants to take over Middle Earth and eventually make war on the Valar, right? Free Bolas. So an interesting thing about the orcs is that Ixalan is a set that's populated, that has the highest density of orcs in the multiverse, apparently. And ooh, I'll take that. That's cool. Yeah, it has the highest population of orcs because that's where all of our available orcs are from. Ouch, I was hoping for a red land, but guess we'll just have to cold seal hard for it. So, Massacre Worm is also a lore card. So, in Lord of the Rings, way back before Sauron was a thing. Hey, I have my red source. That's pretty cool. I think I still just ramp, unfortunately. Maybe our opponent will waste time destroying our rock, and then we won't have to worry about it. But way back in the day, dragons weren't a thing, but Morgoth made dragons. And the first dragons were wingless. They couldn't fly. Yeah, let's get a... Go get him. Get me a Dark Confidant ability. I like card draw. Card draw's cool. Didn't even lose any life. Look at that. That's cool. Yeah, but back then they didn't have wings. So like one of the first ones I think that had wings was in Culligan the Black. That may not be the right one. But in Magic, dragons without wings are called worms, or they used to be back in the day. Like the first one was Elder Sandworm, which was a dragon that had lost its wings. So I thought, what's a really cool worm? Massacre Worm. That'll be our wingless dragon for the deck. There's some reading into it. There's some deep lore. I keep on hitting lands, which is good for my card draw, but not great for my card advantage. I'm also about to be forced to stop talking about Lord of the Rings because this is match 3, isn't it? And we are winning it soundly, so I guess we could play one more because we're kind of under 20 minutes. So like we could sit around and talk about Lord of the Rings a little bit more. Gods above. Let's just play some orcs. Hey, I control another pirate. Weird that. It's almost like all of these orcs are, oh god, next turn I can actually just flip into an old growth. That seemed kinda busted. They only control one dragon, so they will not be nuking anything. to that creature. So we don't attack with Ruin Raider next turn. That's fine. Opponent. Look at this. We're making a dragon. No, you say player, and I want that mana, man. I want it pretty much a lot. So if they block anything with their dragon, we can use the Massacre Worm to deal with it. Massacre Worm. Ouch. Whew, if we hit bad, we could have just been dead there. We pretty much have to win this turn. And I don't know if our Orc and Dragon army is going to be enough to do it. Like, the Forces of Good might have triumphed, and that's a bit of a shame. But I do have a Balrog in the deck. Obviously Balrog is not an MTGA type, right? So we had to get creative. And the most famous depiction of the Balrog is obviously the one from Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, which is a bit controversial in the Lord of the Rings lore community, right? Because there is a bit of contention as to whether or not the man himself, Lord Tolkien, meant for Balrog to have wings. Peter Jackson made a very cool Balrog that had wings, but you're just dead then, huh? We have to attack like this? So we don't die to the Raider. We get enough to cast Tybalt the Imposter, which can then exile the Lifelinker. And then we can just play a Putrid Goblin as Blocker B. Blocker B doesn't matter, honestly, because dragons don't care about blockers. Yeah, like that 5-mana red dragon in their hand that I'm not going to highlight in case it makes me sad is obviously a way that could kill us if they have a 2-mana creature, right? Dragon Sword, that's a good sign. That means they probably don't have it. Our deck is heavy with removal spells, too. And we're getting additional draws every turn. So, we're going to try to gain some life. Everyone but Ayara attacks. Mana value. That's 6 mana value. I don't know, man. Six isn't that much more than 5. Have we got there with the army of the Dark Lord, with our mutated elves? I tried to stay as far away from goblins as possible because you could obviously just make a make a deck that's a goblin deck that's like semi-tangentially related to Lord of the Rings and do okay with yourself. They shaded in the deck because I wanted to do Wraith, but I couldn't find a good Wraith. I know there is one on Arena, but I kind of wanted something smaller because our commander, our Yawgmoth, is like 4 mana. We don't really want our Black Riders to be more than that. I have another one in here, Murderous Rider, just because he kind of has the look of the Nazgul when they're searching for Frodo in the Shire. Ew, Miram, disgusting. One, two, three. Only 3 mana. Ooh, well, I kill you. Very cool stuff, opponent. Unfortunately, the might of the dragons alone is not enough to dissuade the armies of darkness. Take this Orcish Vengeance. We played fast and loose with that too. Like our boy could have killed us at any point. God, what is your name? Ruin Raider? He's an orc though, like he's part of the crew. He wouldn't hurt us unjustly. Either way, thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy, and you want to hear me ramble more about Lord of the Rings, you will. Don't worry about it. But either way, remember to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.